The sunset painted the Blackwell mansion in shades of gold and crimson as Ethan Blackwell stood by the tall window of his study, sipping his evening coffee. The city below shimmered with life, but his own world felt quiet, too quiet. The ticking clock on the wall was the only sound keeping him company, a constant reminder of time that refused to stop even when one's heart did. 2 years had passed since his wife, Emily, was gone, yet her laughter still lingered faintly in the hallways like a ghost refusing to fade. Ethan had everything money could buy: success, luxury, and the kind of influence most men dreamed of, but none of it filled the emptiness left behind. His 5-year-old daughter, Lily, was the only reason he managed to wake up each morning. She was the image of her mother, her curls, her smile, her innocence. But caring for her had become harder as his company demanded more of him. When his assistant insisted he hire a nanny, Ethan agreed, though reluctantly. He didn't want a stranger in his home. Yet, the day Sophie Lane walked in, things changed. He still remembered that moment. Sophie had arrived in a simple floral dress, her hair tied loosely, a calmness about her that felt oddly comforting. She knelt to Lily's level and introduced herself with a gentle smile, instantly winning the little girl's heart. Within days, laughter returned to the mansion. Lily woke up excited every morning, begging Ethan to have breakfast with Miss Sophie. Ethan found himself joining them more often, drawn to the light Sophie carried with her. It wasn't just Lily she healed, it was the home itself. The once silent kitchen filled with the sound of pancakes sizzling. The garden, neglected since Emily's passing, now bloomed again because Sophie spent afternoons planting flowers with Lily. Even the house staff seemed livelier. Everyone noticed it, everyone except Ethan, who refused to admit that Sophie had managed to soften the grief he had built into armor. Tonight, after another long day at work, Ethan stepped into the living room, expecting silence. But instead, he found Sophie sitting on the carpet with Lily, building a castle out of wooden blocks. Lily looked up, squealing, "Daddy, look. We made Mommy's castle." Ethan froze for a second. The mention of Emily always caught him off guard. But Sophie's gentle tone carried him back. "Lily told me her mommy used to love fairy tales," Sophie said softly. "She said you used to read her stories every night." He nodded, a faint smile on his lips. "Yeah, I did." There was a pause, a quiet understanding between them. He wanted to thank her for bringing back pieces of a world he thought was gone, but the words never left his tongue. Instead, he just said, "Dinner's ready soon. Don't be late." Later that evening, as Sophie was leaving, she mentioned her car had been acting up. "It might not start tomorrow," she said apologetically. Ethan didn't think much of it then. "Let me know if you need a ride," he replied casually, not realizing how those simple words would soon change everything. The next day, when Sophie called saying her car had broken down after work, Ethan offered to pick her up without hesitation. It was just a favor, he told himself. Nothing more. But as he drove through unfamiliar streets and darker neighborhoods, unease began to stir. The address she'd given him led to a rundown apartment complex, its paint peeling, its hallway dimly lit by flickering bulbs. He spotted her outside, struggling to balance a grocery bag and what looked like a small stuffed rabbit in her hand. She looked nothing like the cheerful Nanny he saw at home. Her expression was tired, her eyes shadowed with something deeper. Ethan parked and got out of the car. "Sophie," he called out. She froze, clearly surprised to see him. "Mr. Blackwell, you didn't have to." He cut her off gently. "You said your car broke down. I'll take you home." But as she hesitated, clutching that small toy close to her chest, Ethan realized for the first time that there was more to Sophie Lane than he'd ever known. Something she wasn't telling him, and something that was about to change everything. Rain drizzled lightly against the windshield as Ethan drove, glancing occasionally at Sophie sitting in the passenger seat. The hum of the engine filled the silence between them. She looked different tonight, more vulnerable, more human. Gone was the confident, smiling Nanny who filled his house with laughter. Her hands gripped the grocery bag tightly, knuckles pale, and her gaze stayed fixed on the raindrops sliding down her window. "You didn't tell me you lived around here," Ethan finally said, his voice calm but edged with curiosity. Sophie hesitated before answering. "It's temporary, just until I find a better place." He nodded slowly, eyes on the road. The neighborhood wasn't safe. He could tell from the broken streetlights and graffiti-covered walls. It bothered him to think of her walking home alone every night after caring for his daughter as if she belonged to a different world. When he dropped her off at the apartment complex, Sophie thanked him politely, her tone too formal for someone who spent every day with his child. "Good night, Mr. Blackwell," she said softly, stepping out into the rain. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He kept replaying the image of Sophie standing in the dim glow of the streetlight, clutching that small toy rabbit. Why did she have it? And why did she look like she was hiding something? The next morning, he found her already in the kitchen, making pancakes with Lily. Her laughter rang through the air again, but Ethan couldn't shake off his curiosity. During breakfast, he asked casually, "So, how long have you been in the city?" She smiled faintly. "A few years. I moved here to start over. Family nearby." Her expression faltered. "No, just me." That was all she said, and Ethan didn't press further, though he wanted to. Something about the way she avoided his eyes told him there were stories behind her silence. Over the following days, Ethan made a habit of picking her up from work. He told himself it was just to ensure her safety, but deep down, he knew he wanted to understand her. Each evening, their drives became a little less formal. She talked about books, cooking, and how much she adored Lily. He noticed how her face lit up whenever she mentioned his daughter. She listened when he spoke about his company, his exhaustion, and his late wife. No one had listened to him like that in years. One rainy evening, as they sat in the car outside her building, Ethan finally asked, "Sophie, why take a nanny job when you're so overqualified? You could have done anything." She looked down at her hands, twisting her fingers nervously. "Because I needed something steady. Something safe." He didn't understand what she meant by safe, but the tremor in her voice told him there was pain hidden somewhere behind it. Before he could ask more, she smiled faintly and said, "Good night, Mr. Blackwell," before stepping out. Days turned into weeks. The bond between them deepened. Not spoken, but felt. Ethan started noticing the small things. How Sophie hummed Emily's favorite lullaby without ever knowing it was hers, how she knew just what to say to calm Lily when she cried. She fit into their lives so naturally that it scared him. One evening, disaster struck. Lily came down with a sudden high fever while Ethan was at a board meeting. By the time he reached the hospital, panic tightening his chest, he found Sophie sitting beside Lily's bed, holding her hand, whispering softly. The child's head rested in her lap, comforted by her presence. The doctor told him Lily was stable now, thanks to Sophie's quick action. Relieved, Ethan went to thank her, but before he could, a nurse walked in with a file and said casually, "Mrs. Lane Blackwell, you'll need to sign these forms." Sophie froze. Ethan blinked in confusion. "What did you just call her?" The nurse looked between them. "Mrs. Lane Blackwell. That's the name she gave on the admission form." Ethan turned toward Sophie, his pulse quickening. "Sophie, why would you write that?" She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Her eyes shimmered with guilt and something close to fear. Ethan felt his world tilt slightly. That night, as he watched her through the hospital room's glass window, holding his daughter's hand, one question echoed in his mind: who exactly is Sophie Lane? And why did it feel like she had a connection to his life long before she ever walked into it? The next morning, the hospital room felt colder than usual. Ethan stood by the window, staring at the city beyond the glass while Sophie quietly folded Lily's blanket. The silence between them was heavy, thick with unanswered questions. He couldn't stop thinking about the nurse's words, "Mrs. Lane Blackwell." It played on repeat in his mind like a broken record. Finally, he turned to face her. "You're going to tell me what that means, right?" His tone was calm, but there was an unmistakable edge beneath it. Sophie paused, her fingers tightening around the fabric. "It's not what you think," she whispered. "Then what is it?" he pressed. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been lying to me since the day we met." Her eyes glistened, and she lowered her head. "I wasn't lying. I just didn't want my past to follow me here." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Your past, Sophie. My daughter trusts you. I trust you. You live in my home. If there's something I should know, say it." For a moment, she said nothing. Then she exhaled shakily. "Your wife, Emily, she knew me. Ethan froze. What? I met her years ago, Sophie continued, her voice trembling. I was in a shelter then, trying to leave an abusive relationship. She came one night with a donation program her charity ran. I didn't even know who she was until later. She helped me get back on my feet. She helped me find work, an apartment, a reason to live again. Tears filled her eyes. She saved me, Ethan. I owed her everything. Ethan's mind reeled. He remembered Emily's countless charity projects, the way she'd pour her heart into helping women and children. But he never knew any of their faces. You knew my wife, he said slowly. And you never told me. I wanted to, she said softly. But when I saw your job listing, I panicked. I didn't want you to think I used her name to get close to you. I needed this job, not as charity, but because I love working with children. I wanted to be someone on my own merit. Ethan turned away, emotions warring inside him, shock, anger, betrayal, and something more complicated that he couldn't name. So, what? You just decided to hide the truth forever. I thought it wouldn't matter, she whispered. Until it did. Her honesty should have eased the tension, but it only deepened his confusion. Everything he thought he knew about her felt twisted now. The connection between them, those quiet evenings, the way she understood him, the way Lily adored her, it all felt tangled in the shadow of his wife's memory. He rubbed his forehead, trying to think clearly. You should have told me, Sophie. You had every chance. She looked at him with tearful eyes. You're right, I was scared. You've been through so much loss. I didn't want to be another ghost from your past. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The heart monitor beside Lily beeped softly, the only sound between them. Ethan finally said, maybe it's best you take a few days off. Her lips parted in protest, but the words died there. If that's what you want, she said quietly. She gathered her things, glancing once more at Lily's sleeping form before walking out of the room. When the door closed behind her, Ethan sat down heavily beside his daughter's bed. Lily stirred slightly and whispered, Daddy, where's Miss Sophie? He swallowed hard. She'll be back soon, sweetheart. But the lie stung as it left his mouth. Over the next few days, the house grew quiet again, too quiet. Lily refused to eat, cried for Sophie, and clutched the stuffed rabbit she'd given her. Ethan tried to distract himself with work, but the mansion felt emptier than ever. Every corner reminded him of her. The laughter in the kitchen, the faint scent of her perfume near Lily's room, the warmth she brought into a home that had forgotten what life felt like. Then one night, as he checked Lily's backpack, a folded piece of paper slipped out. It was a letter, written in Sophie's neat handwriting. Mr. Blackwell, it began. I never meant to deceive you. Your wife once told me that every broken heart deserves a second chance. I only wanted to honor that. Thank you for trusting me with Lily. She healed parts of me I didn't know could heal. Please tell her I love her. Always, Sophie. Ethan sat there in silence, the letter trembling in his hands. For the first time, he realized the truth. Sophie hadn't betrayed him. She'd only tried to protect him, just as Emily once protected her. And he had pushed her away. The guilt was sharp and immediate. He stood abruptly, his decision made. It was time to fix what he'd broken. It was time to bring Sophie home. The rain came down in sheets as Ethan's car sped through the city streets, windshield wipers beating in rhythm with his heartbeat. Sophie's letter lay on the passenger seat beside him, edges damp from his grip. Each word replayed in his mind, heavy with truth and remorse. He had been so blinded by his fear of being hurt again that he couldn't see what was right in front of him, a woman who had brought light back into his broken home. When he reached her apartment building, the same dimly lit one he'd visited weeks ago, he saw the faint glow from a window on the second floor. Boxes were stacked by the door. She was leaving. Panic surged through him as he jumped out of the car, not even bothering with an umbrella. The rain soaked through his suit as he ran up the narrow stairs two at a time, his shoes echoing against the cracked steps. He knocked on her door. Once, twice, no answer. On the third knock, it opened slowly. Sophie stood there, startled, holding a small box in her hands. Her hair was damp, her eyes red from crying, but even in that fragile moment, she looked beautiful, real, human, and heartbreakingly strong. Ethan, she whispered, as though she didn't believe he was really there. He exhaled, voice rough. You were just going to disappear. Her lips trembled. I thought it was best. You made it clear that I didn't belong there. He stepped forward, the rain dripping from his hair onto her doorstep. I was wrong, he said simply. I was angry, confused, but mostly afraid. Sophie blinked, confused. Afraid, he nodded. Afraid to let anyone in again. Afraid that caring about you meant forgetting Emily. But it doesn't. She's part of me, and maybe she sent you to us because she knew we needed you. Tears welled in her eyes. Ethan, no, he cut in gently. Let me finish. He took a slow breath, searching for words. When I read your letter, it hit me. I've been alive, but not living. You changed that. You brought Lily's laughter back. You brought warmth back into a home that had been frozen for 2 years. Sophie set the box down, her hands shaking. I never wanted to take her place. I just wanted to help you both find peace. And you did, he said softly. You did more than that. For a long moment, they just looked at each other, the silence filled with all the words they hadn't said. The sound of rain against the windows was the only witness to their confession. Please don't go, Ethan said finally, his voice breaking. Lily needs you, and so do I. Sophie's tears spilled freely now. I thought I lost this job, this home. I thought I lost you. He stepped closer, his hand brushing her cheek, wiping away a raindrop, or maybe a tear. You can't lose what you were meant to find, he whispered. Emily helped you once. Maybe now it's my turn. Sophie closed her eyes, overwhelmed. When she opened them again, her expression softened. Are you sure about this? About me? Ethan smiled faintly, the kind of smile that came from somewhere deep, somewhere healed. For the first time in a long time, I'm sure of something. He reached for her hand and gently led her down the stairs, through the rain, toward his car. She hesitated for a moment, glancing back at the small apartment that had been both her refuge and her prison. Then she turned to him and nodded. When they arrived back at the mansion, Lily was waiting by the window. The moment she saw Sophie, she ran into her arms, laughing and crying at once. I knew you'd come back, she shouted, clinging to her tightly. Ethan watched them, emotion swelling in his chest. For the first time in years, the house didn't feel haunted. It felt alive. Later that evening, as they sat together in the garden, Lily chasing butterflies while the rain gave way to soft sunlight, Ethan turned to Sophie. Do you think Emily would approve? He asked quietly. Sophie smiled, her eyes glistening. I think she'd be happy you're smiling again. He took her hand in his, intertwining their fingers. Then maybe this is what she wanted all along. The breeze carried the scent of blooming flowers, and Lily's laughter echoed in the air. For the first time in years, Ethan felt at peace, not because he had moved on, but because he had finally opened his heart again. Sophie leaned her head on his shoulder, whispering, sometimes love finds you when you're not looking. Ethan smiled, watching the sun break through the clouds. And sometimes, he murmured, it finds you when you've given up hope. In that moment, surrounded by laughter and light, they both knew, the past had led them exactly where they were meant to be.